Cold didn't sneak into medieval longhouses, it attacked. It pushed through doors, slid along floors, and crawled up legs until bones ached. And yet, for centuries, people survived brutal winters without central heating, electric blowers, or insulation as we know it. They did it with something so simple, it sounds almost laughable today. An ice draft barrier built right into the way they entered their homes. And here's the surprising part. This wasn't accidental. It was deliberate, clever, and incredibly effective. This is one of those forgotten survival tricks that looks primitive until you understand it. Then it feels almost genius. Longhouses were not small cottages tucked away from the elements. They were long communal structures built to house families, animals, tools, and food under one roof. Found across medieval Europe, especially in colder northern regions, they had to work as survival machines first, and living spaces second. Fire was precious. Fuel was limited, heat loss could mean sickness or death, so every architectural choice mattered, starting with the biggest weakness in any shelter, the entrance. The medieval ice draft barrier wasn't a wall of frozen water, despite the name sounding dramatic. It was a physical interruption of airflow, designed to stop icy wind from racing straight into the heart of the building. Cold air is heavy, it hugs the ground. Medieval builders knew this, not through textbooks, but through lived experience. They watched how smoke moved, they felt where cold settled, and they adapted. Instead of placing doors directly in line with the main living space, longhouses often used offset entrances. You'd step inside, turn, then move again before reaching the central area. This created a dead zone for cold air. Wind lost momentum. Cold pooled near the entrance instead of flowing freely. The effect was immediate and powerful. Less draft, less heat loss, more survivable nights. Now, this is where things get clever. In many longhouses, the floor near the entrance was intentionally lower than the rest of the interior. That depression acted like a cold trap. Freezing air slid down and stayed there while warmer air rose and remained where people slept, cooked, and worked. No moving parts. No maintenance. Just gravity and common sense working together. This wasn't comfort. This was survival physics. The materials reinforced the system. Thick timber walls, packed earth, turf, or stone held thermal mass. They absorbed heat from the central hearth during the day and released it slowly at night. But, without a draft barrier, that stored warmth would be ripped away by constant airflow. The entrance design protected the investment of heat, making every log burned count longer. Here's the interesting part. These barriers weren't always obvious walls. Sometimes they were partial screens made of wood or woven material. Sometimes they were animal hides hung strategically. In harsher climates, temporary winter additions were common. Extra planks, packed snow, even stacked firewood near the doorway to narrow the opening. The goal was the same: break the wind, slow the cold, keep the core warm. And animals played a role too. In many longhouses, livestock were housed at one end of the building, separated but still under the same roof. Their body heat mattered, but animals also hated drafts. The ice draft barrier helped protect them as well, reducing stress and improving survival through winter. A warmer animal was a healthier animal. A healthier animal meant milk, meat, and labor when spring returned. This wasn't kindness, it was strategy. Medieval winters were not romantic. They were long, dark, and unforgiving. A single bad season could wipe out a family. Fuel shortages were common. Cutting firewood in deep snow was dangerous and exhausting, so reducing heat loss was just as important as producing heat. The draft barrier turned the longhouse into a controlled environment, crude by modern standards, but, remarkably efficient. What's striking is how universal this idea was. Variations of draft-breaking entrances appear across cultures. From Scandinavian longhouses to alpine farmhouses and even early Arctic dwellings, the principle repeats. Cold air must be slowed, heat must be protected. Architecture becomes a tool, not an aesthetic. Modern builders often rediscover this by accident. Mudrooms, entry vestibules, airlocks in cold climates, these are honestly the same idea, just repackaged with drywall and insulation. Medieval people were doing it with wood, earth, and instinct. And they understood airflow better than we give them credit for. Smoke from the hearth was both a problem and a teacher. Too much draft and, well, the fire burned too fast. Too little and smoke filled the room. The entrance barrier helped balance this. Air entered slowly, fed the fire, then exited through roof vents or gaps. The house breathed, but it didn't gasp. That balance made indoor life possible during months when outside temperatures could stay below freezing for weeks. People worked indoors, they repaired tools, they told stories, they survived. There's also a psychological element that's, pretty easy to miss. Crossing an offset entrance meant leaving the chaos of winter behind. The turn inward created a moment of separation. Cold, noise, and wind stayed outside. Inside was warmth, light, and community. That really mattered in a world where, honestly, morale could break before bodies did. For survival enthusiasts today, this technique is still, pretty relevant. Whether you're building a primitive shelter, a cabin, or even setting up a winter camp, breaking direct airflow at the entrance can really improve warmth. A simple L-shaped entry, a hanging barrier, or a lowered cold sink near the door can make the difference between comfort and, constant shivering. No technology required, just understanding. What makes the medieval ice draft barrier so powerful isn't its complexity, it's its humility. It doesn't fight nature, it works with it. Cold air behaves a certain way, so the house responds accordingly. That mindset, honestly, runs through all effective survival systems. Observe first, and then build. And this is exactly why these techniques lasted for centuries. They weren't trends, they were proven solutions, refined by generations who just couldn't afford mistakes. Today, we tend to think of medieval buildings as crude or unsophisticated, but when it came to staying alive in extreme conditions, these people were experts. Their lives depended on it. The ice draft barrier is a quiet reminder that intelligence doesn't always look like innovation. Sometimes, it looks like a well-placed doorway. So the next time winter wind howls outside and you feel safe indoors, remember this. Long before thermostats and insulation ratings, people solved the same problem with sharp observation and smart design. They didn't eliminate the cold, they outsmarted it. If you enjoy uncovering real, practical survival knowledge pulled straight from history, this is exactly what Legacy of Survival is about. These aren't myths, they're methods, tested by time, forged by necessity. If this story gave you a new respect for ancient ingenuity, hit the like button, subscribe for more forgotten survival tactics that still matter today, share this with someone who loves history, self-reliance, or just clever human solutions. And stay tuned, because the past has a lot more secrets left to teach us.